everyone, and welcome to this very special holiday special episode of Twitch Tales. Today we will be taking a break from Apus's story, or this particular chapter of Apus's story, and looking back to a bit of a prologue to Apus's story. We will be going back to the year 3989, or in other words, 3.5 years before the start of Apus's campaign. We will be in Schafgushel, in late Colabrun. Colabrun is a short half-month towards the end of the year. It's only 2 weeks long, and it is in celebration of the god Kolak, who is a god of death and disease and pestilence and decay. It is a 2-week month dedicated to Kolak to appease him for the upcoming year, so that he doesn't take out his domain, his death and disease on the town or the occupants or the crops or yields or livestock and all of the things that he could do if we did not appease him. So Colabrun comes towards the end of the year, right before the other end of the spectrum, Sintabrun. Sintabrun is the last month of the year. It too is also a 2-week month, and it is in celebration of the god Sintabris, Sintalun. Sintalun is the god of levity and joy and fun and pastimes and laughter and amusement and relaxation, leisure time, all of those sorts of things in one. And so the last month of the year is in celebration of Sintalun, and it is a 2-week holiday where people are not expected to work. The end of the first week is a day called All Days Eve. Sorry, the very last day of the week is All Joys Day, and that is essentially the holiday, the Christmas day, as it were. And then the last week of the year is the come down, is the hangover week, the week where people have the last few days of enjoying themselves before the new year starts again. So we are in the last few days of Colabrun, with mere days before the start of the 2-week Sintabrun festival. Little do the residents of Schafgushel know, this is the last of the Sintabrun festivals that many of them will ever experience. This is mere months before the attack on Schafgushel. In a few months' time, something will happen to provoke the ire of an old green dragon that lives in a nearby forest, a dragon called Unguhef. And Unguhef will take out his wrath on the town of Schafgushel, killing, devouring, poisoning many a people in the town, and sparking off Apus's campaign. But for now, these people are unaware, and it is up to us today to help give them the best All Joys Day that we can possibly give them by preparing many a different thing. So, we today will not be playing as a single character, but as an entire town. It is up to you to suggest certain things that you might want to do as this town to prepare for a festival in a few days' time. I've got some ideas of what we might do, but it's up to you to decide what it is that this town is going to do to try and prepare, and then I will decide on certain roles that will be appropriate to see how this works. I spike the eggnog immediately. Before there is even talk of eggnog, we are already talking about spiking it. That is the sort of thing that we're going to have to be doing today, yes. Is it snowy? Yes. So we are set in the medieval equivalent of fantasy Great Britain, and as such it is midwinter. This festival is the end of the year, midwinter, and it is relatively cold and a little bit snowy from time to time. So let me set the setting for you. Schafgushel is a mainly dwarven town. It is known predominantly for its sheep shearing and sheep rearing, wool shearing and carding and exporting to other towns. It is a hill dwarf town on the edge of a large magical forest. There are many people that live in Schafgushel, many hundreds of people including dwarves and humans. There may be other races as well, as we deem them necessary. I haven't fully fleshed out every single member of the NPCs of the town, so if you decide that you think it necessary that there be a rock gnome in the town or a forest gnome, then I'll roll for it and see if there's a chance that there actually is a forest gnome that lives here in Schafgushel. But for the most part, it is the vast majority are dwarves, with the second largest ethnicity of folk in this town is humans. This is the town where Apis Hive lives with their family. Apis is about 50 years old at this point, and therefore is just about arriving into early adulthood. They are the equivalent of what would be like a 25-year-old human or so in states of development and things. Apis has a friend who is a mool, a half dwarf, half human, who lives here in the town with them as well, a mool called Lokara. Lokara's family lives here. What else do we need to know? We are built on across a mostly flat. There's not a lot of multi-story buildings here in Schafgushel. It is mostly flat and bungalow sort of region, bungalow sort of buildings. So, as we are approaching the end of Colabran, the first thing to decide is, how do you think Schafgushel has prepared? How do you think Schafgushel has prepared and celebrated and shown deference to the god Kolak, the god of disease and pestilence and decay? What have they done during Colabran to appease the god of death before the next year begins? The god Kolak. Let me pull him up and read anything that I might have missed about him. Decay, disease, pestilence, famine, and drought. And his symbol, Kolak's symbol, is a wilted ear of wheat or corn, wilted over like so. Killed a bunch of trees, chopped down the trees. That is probably a smart move, Medio Man. So as part of deference to Kolak, they went out and deforested an entire patch of the nearby forest. It acts as a deference to the god of death and decay, as these living creatures are now dying, but it also prepares firewood for the next festival to happen as well, and to get you through winter. So I like that. Killing a bunch of trees, collecting the dead branches, decorating the place with dead branches. I like that one as well, decorating with dead branches, because it can be quite... they can be quite pretty to use dead leaves and branches, can't they? So it's accepting the beauty in death. So I will say, let's make a lumberjack roll on behalf of the town to see how lumberjack roll on behalf of the town to see how well we can chop down a bunch of trees. How many people were involved? Not the greatest. 5. So 5 on the dice. There's not a lot of people involved in the lumber this year. I'm just going to take note of some things as we go. Chopping down the trees. Perhaps we were more focused on some of the other things this year. Lumberjack. Total of 5. Decorating with dead branches. Alright, decoration roll. Let's have a look with the town. 12, much better. So decorating with dead branches. Decorating, cool. What else we got? Build an effigy out of the wood and burn it. Compost pile made of sacrifices, that could be cool. So while Kolak is in the death domain, his domain isn't that of... It's a tricky one. He's not the god of death. He's not responsible for people dying and bringing them back. That's much more Miganesh's domain. Miganesh is the god of transversal of sentient life from one plane to another plane after they die. He's the transporter of souls. He's the man with the boat and the river Styx, for instance. So Kolak is more about the negative side of death of plant life and animal life, non-sentient life, I guess. So disease and pestilence and things like that, rather than and famine, rather than actual death itself. So I don't think burning an effigy of a person would really work towards abating his needs, if that's the right word. Leading up to the holiday, they've built large bonfires throughout the night. Slaughter one of the fattest livestock in town. I think that's probably a good idea there, Drakiru. So let's roll a that does feel like a Kolak thing, because killing of livestock with disease and things is probably his domain. Eating that livestock after it's slaughtered is probably not. That probably goes somewhat to undermine him. If you were to slaughter one of the fattest livestock and then let it go to waste, specifically, leave it out in the field to rot, that is definitely a strong support of Kolak. And sacrificing one of your fattest livestock to prevent him taking out the rest the next year is probably something that they would do, I imagine. So let's roll to see just a general sort of farming check to see how well you've raised your livestock this year. Here, people in Schafgushel. Oh, very good, 16. So livestock roll was a 16. We've got a very good supply of lamb and mutton going on in town. And then you go out and you slaughter one. You pick the best one, the one that would be have the most meat on it, the most it would be the best to have at a feast, and the people of the town go out in a celebration to Kolak on the 1st of Kolabron, and they pick the best one and they slaughter it in the field and then leave it to go off, as it were. So that's a good. I think that's good enough for Kolak. He's not a very he's not a needy god per se. He just wants to be remembered. He likes that he's got a festival to his name. Well, not really a festival, but he's got a month to his name. He likes being shown deference by the people so that he doesn't have to remind them that he exists. Just a nice little Christmas bonus for him to mediate him before he feels hard done by and takes it out on the people in the next year. So after the first week of Kolabron, we are now starting to look towards preparing for Sintabron. What do we do to prepare? We're not yet in Sintabron, but what do we do to prepare for the things we might need for Sintabron? I've got some ideas, but you guys give me yours first, and if we start to run out, I'll pull up in mine. Raising the fattest livestock would give the farmer that raised it some fame. Yeah, probably as well. Yeah, there's probably some reputation about. There's some honour for the farmer that manages that is selected for its livestock to be. Although to be fair, probably the fattest livestock of each of the farms would probably be selected, so that each individual farm feels like they have personally paid deference to Kolak. Send out a hunting party for more exotic meats for the feast. They'll be somewhat preserved by the cold. Wonderful idea, Tempest. All right, so going forward with Tempest's idea, I'm going to roll a hunting check. Now, Apis is one of the best hunters of Schafgushel, so Apis would be one of, if not the person that's leading the hunting party in this particular expedition. Apis at this stage of the life would not yet be even a level 1 ranger. So we don't have all of our regular ranger abilities. But, oh, nice. It was almost a 3, ticked over to a 17. 17 hunting, nice. I'm not adding anything as we're sort of just collectively doing rolls for the town. The D20 is just accounting for how well the roll of the town is. And so a 17 is almost as good as it can be. So they came back with some very nice animals, some animals that are a little further afield. Now, the forest that Apis is hunting in is a forest called Giftegald. Giftegald is known to have a large old green dragon living in it somewhere, but he kind of stays to himself. Most of the residents of Schafgushel have never met Ungehef, thankfully. They've had no reason to have any sort of crossover with him. So Apis knows not to go too deep into the Giftgald forest for fear of angering Giftegald or encountering him. But they do know that the deeper you go, the more magical the creatures are, the more mystical and exotic these creatures are. Giftegald, by way of it being a naturally magical forest, has a tendency to have some larger animals involved, some giant versions of beasties, giant badgers and foxes and rats and owls and all sorts of the creatures that you would see around in the wintertime of a British wildlife. So giant robins and things like that. So Apis goes hunting, gets really well with the hunting roll there, and gets grabs a couple of more exotic animals to bring back. What else do we want to do? Gather ice and snow for a snowman and ice sculpture competition. Excellent idea, Drakiru. So, firstly, let me roll a weather check to see. Whether or not it is snowing at this time of year. So it would be, give me a percentage chance of it being snowy, and roll for it. It is. Excellent. It is, and it's just under the what I'd set it as. I set it as 50% chance, and I got a 47. So it's not super snowing yet, but it is just about starting. In this last couple of days of Calabran, it is starting to snow. So we know that we will be able to have enough snow if it continues for the next few days. By the start of Sintabran, we'll have some snow collecting, actually landing and settling. And then a few days after that, there's even more snow. There'll probably be enough for a snowman competition towards the end of the first week of Sintabran. So I will roll to see where we can set up maybe one of the farms now that they're starting to bring their sheep into their barns for winter. They've got some of the fields open, some of the grazing fields and meadows are available, so they start to use those as large collecting areas for the snow and the ice. Start to compact some of that snow as they go. 11, so just above average, an 11 on snow gathering. Thankfully it's a mostly passive thing, but there'll be some snow for the festival. Is there a frozen lake around for some ice fishing contests? Let me think. So Schafgushel, where it's located, is on the edge of a river. No frozen lakes. There might be a frozen lake within walking distance. Let's give it a chance. I don't think it's because it's in the hills. Not a lot of chance. Oh, look at that. There is. I gave it a 25% chance and I got a 23. So just under. So yes, there is a frozen lake relatively nearby, and areas of the river that runs through the hills here is also partially frozen at the edges and things. So ice fishing competition, that could be cool. So this is something that we would do during the actual festival of Sintabran. How would we prepare? What needs to be prepared in order to preparing fishing rods and things, I suppose. The carpenters of town, the fishermen of town. Let's see how they do in preparing some nets and some fishing rods and hooks and bait and things. 7, not the greatest. That's not some of the main focus. Preparing fishermen fishing. Preparing fishing, 7. So they're not focused on that. That seems like they're not doing their all of their attention onto that one. Clean ice for ice skating too. Ooh, okay, yeah. So parts of the icy lake for ice fishing and parts for ice skating. Let's see if there's anybody in town that would put their efforts towards creating ice skates. When was ice skating invented? Ooh, a 7. I don't think this is going to be a go-ahead. Maybe there's 1 or 2 sets of ice skates. Making ice skates. Making ice skates, or maybe fixing up the ice skates from the previous year if they'd done it before. We need to make festive decorations and such. Of course, there's festive decorations to be made. So let's make a roll to see how well are we going with these festive decorations. Give me some ideas in the chat of what sort of decorations we want to be making. I'll give us a roll to see how well we're doing at collecting the... Ooh, okay, so this will help. It was a 2. So making festive decorations like wreaths and candles and things. Making decorations. We got a 2. So that one is not going well. Why is it? Give me some ideas. Why is it that the decorations are... Why is Schafgushel struggling so much to make decorations? Garlands and wreaths and candles and things. Stars. Yeah, it's because we let the kids decorate. I like that. I like that. We're letting the children decorate. Too much eggnog. That's probably what's happened. Yeah, people are starting to get a little bit drink maybe. Wax shortage. I like that. Yeah, wax shortage. Fewer candles than most years. So I'll put in brackets next to it. Wax shortage. Wax shortage. Children in charge. Children in charge. It's cute, but it's not good decorations. I like that. So they've left the children in charge of the making of the decorations, and there's also a wax shortage, so that they're a little low on candles this year. The kids attached some of the candles to dry wreaths and set them on fire. Yeah, I like that. So none of the houses burned down, thankfully, but we did lose quite a few of the decorations because of it. All right, so that is plenty to be doing for the last couple of days of Colabron. This will take us all the way into the start of Sintabron. Start of Sintabron starts because it's a 2-week month. Colabron and Sintabron are 2-week months that make up the 4 weeks of a usual month. And every month normally starts on a new moon. And that means that Colabron starts on new moon, but Sintabron is the only month of the year that starts on a full moon. So it is a full moon on the 1st of Sintabron. It is a bright night. It is snowing a little. The snow has eased off during the night when there's a very bright full moon. What do you think? As is the norm, usually we celebrate the particular god that the month is named for. We celebrate them on the 1st of the month. So this is the 1st of Sintabron, and it is in deference, in honor of Sintalan. Sintalan is the god of levity in all of this. So what do we do on that first day, the full moon of Sintabron? It is not the most important day of the year. The most important day is a week from now, at the end of this week, on Sinta Day. It is a day of the week that is also named after Sinta Day, which is why it's extra important. The first Sinta Day of Sintabron is a day and a month that is both named after this god of levity and joy. And that shows you how important it is to these people, how to take some downtime to actually enjoy life. Are there werebees? There might be werebees. There are no were animals in the village in Schafgushel. Me and my Latin American influence think of tamales. Tamales. Do you have anything similar to tamales? I don't really know what tamales are, so I'm not sure. Do we have? Let me pause and look that up. Corn husk wrapped bundles of food. Is that what that is? Corn husk wrapped. Cool. Yeah, we could. Somebody in town could make some of those things. Sure. Yeah, I mean, why not? Dwarven culture. So one of the things I'm wanting to do, maybe next year, maybe the year after, at some point, one of the things that's important for me to do for my world building is I want to actually sit down and think about the cultures of each of the main races of D&D. I want to really make them feel different. I want to think about what sort of celebratory festivals each of them attends, and I want to think about what sort of food they eat, how they work with what happens with their dead, what do they do how do they bury their dead or whatever, what's important to them, how do they greet each other, all that sort of thing. I've never really fleshed out that, and so my dwarves and elves and humans and hobbits all kind of feel like a little bit just different versions of the same thing. I want them to really feel different in future, so I'm going to be putting some thought into that. But for now, let's say yes, they can eat tamales, and if it's not dwarves, then maybe there's another, maybe there's a smaller, like a little India or a little China, like in big cities where there's like a small pocket of another culture. Maybe it's something like that in Schafgushel, where there's this very small pocket of tiefling culture or something that eats tamale-like food. So for the inclusion of tamales, let's go with a culinary food. Culinary check. Let's go. Okay. Oh dear, that's a 2. So it seems like maybe one person in town really likes this particular type of food. Maybe they brought it in from another city where they saw it. They saw it as like street food maybe, and they were like, "Ooh, this is a great thing," and they can't fully remember how to make it. What do you think? What's gone wrong to make this making of tamales, or the equivalent of tamales? Am I even saying it right? I don't know. What's gone wrong with the tamale making process that they've screwed it up so much? They've wrapped them in pastry. Yeah, they're going off memory, and they couldn't remember what they were wrapped in. They were like stuffing of something in pastry, I think, and then they made pastry, and it's nice. It makes like a sausage roll. But it's not. It's not exactly a tamale. It's just one person doing the whole work, and they won't be, yeah, I like that. It's also just not good because it's only one person that's making them, and they've never really made them before. They've just seen them somewhere else, out of date ingredients, and then they deep fried them. They used wheat flour instead of corn flour. Yeah, used regular corn instead of cornmeal, and just ended up with those little corn nuggets you can get at some restaurants. So it's still edible food. It's just not exact. It's not entirely. It's not even remotely what they were going for. Somebody's like, "Oh, these are nice," and they're like, "Yeah, it's not what I was trying to make though." So that small section of let's name that person. What's the name, and should I roll for them at random to see what their gender and race is, or should we decide? Who's the person trying to make tamales? Should I roll, or should we make a decision in chat? Let's roll for it. Roll for it. All right, roll for it. So I'll roll on my random NPC generator. So that's a D1000. Ooh, tell you what. I'll take a moment to find my D1000, which I have. So in normal D&D, you got a D10. Which is a 10-sided dice with numbers 0 to 9 on it. And then there's a D100, or a percentile, which is another D10 with the numbers from 0 to 90 on it. And when you roll those together, you get 48, or you get 66, or what have you. But I have got this one, which is another D10, with the numbers from 0 to 900 on it. So now you can roll these, and you get any number between 1 and 1,000. And I've also got this one, which is a D1000, a 10,000 rather, which is again all the numbers from 0 to 900 on it. 9,000. You know what I'm trying to say. And I've got all of those all the way up to 1,000,000. So I've got this one here, which is a D100,000, and somewhere I've got a D1,000,000. There it is, D1,000,000. So I can roll all 6 of these dice together, and it'll generate a random number with equal uniform distribution between 0 and 999,999. It's over 9,000. That's right. Yeah. All right. So for my random generator, for the race, I will roll a D1000, and I'll get 313. And then I look on my little thing, and 313 is a Stoutfoot Halfling. Stoutfoot Halflings are like almost crosses between Halflings and Dwarves. Not exactly a cross. They are a viable race of their own, so they're not a half race. But they are descended from both Halflings and Dwarves. They have poison resistance, and they're a little stockier than regular Halflings, but they're not quite Dwarven. So this person was a Stoutfoot Halfling. Let's roll my random gender now. So gender, I'll roll a d20 for it. 8. So on a 1 to 9, they are cis male. So there we go. That's a cis male stoutfoot halfling, and now we need to name them. You guys come up with a name for this male stoutfoot halfling that wanted to make some tamales, and screwed it up because they couldn't remember. Gordon. God, I like Gordon. Gordon Brutor. Gordon Brutor. I'm gonna write that one down. Gordon Brutor. That's his name. He's a bit of a what is his profession? Is he a cook by profession, or is he just doing this randomly? Gordon Brutor. He's a hobby baker, so he's not a baker by trade. Let's put brackets. Enjoys baking as a hobby. Elderly man, used to be a cook, a retired cook. I like that. He's a retired cook, and now he bakes as a hobby. Gordon Brutor, stoutfoot halfling. So he is dealing with his tamales on the first day of the new year, first day of the new month rather, Sintabran. What else are we doing on the first day of Sintabran? So tamales is a halfling traditional food maybe, and he tried to recreate it and failed. His mum usually makes them. I like that. He's an old man that's retired and he can't really remember how his mum used to make them maybe. Pranks. Some pranks to relieve stress. Okay, so some of the younger folk in the town are pulling some pranks on people because it is the season to be levity, to be joyful and poke fun at people and just have a bit of a good time. Maybe even the first of Sintabran is the equivalent of April Fool's perhaps, because it's in honor of the god of levity. So I like that. I like the idea of that being the case. So let's roll a d20, see how the pranks are going. A 6. So describe a 6 on pranking for me. Pranks 6. Is it that the people aren't responding to them well, or is it that the pranks aren't well thought out and so they're a little bit more malicious than funny, or is it that there's just not enough kids that are interested in doing pranks this year? Why is the pranking not going so well? A 6 on pranks isn't like the worst. It's still in the sort of second quadrant, the second quarter. Ding dong ditching is a 6 on pranks. Yeah, it's not like clever pranks. It's just silly pranks like ding dong ditch, yeah, or knock it or run or whatever you call it. And that's one that's got a lot of different names, isn't it? The Phantom Postman, I've heard it called. The knock it or run, ding dong ditch. You all know what it is. We jump up behind someone, they go, "Dude, I knew you were there." The pranks are just really obvious kids pranks. Yeah. They pranked Gordon with mixing his ingredients. The pranks are so obvious and people are intentionally falling for them to make them feel better. I like that. Okay, so we've got a few kids that the kids that aren't making decorations are out trying to prank people, and they're just really obvious pranks, and people are just falling for it on purpose, just to be like, haha, yep, okay, cool, let's move on. All right, so what else are people doing on this first day of Sintabran? Levity for the kids. Organise a scavenger hunt with a nice cake as a prize. Oh, cool! I like that. Organise a scavenger hunt for the not just the kids, but anybody who wants to be involved. That's another 6. Scavenger hunt for the kids. Scavenger. A 6. So why is it that the scavenger hunt is relatively low? Why is it below average this year? Because the average year of any of these things, on an average year in Sintabran, we're looking at about a 10 or 11. So this year, the scavenger hunt is subpar. Why is the scavenger hunt? Someone stole the cake this year. They kept finding scavenging animals. What do you mean? Oh, they're looking for scavengers. They hid the scavenger prizes and then it snowed. I like that. I like that a lot. So overnight, somebody on the last day of Calabran, to celebrate Sintabran on the first day, the next night, they they hid a bunch of the scavenger prizes. They baked the cake, and then and then somebody ended up thinking that the cake was just like a part of the feast the next day, and just like took it away and started cutting into it and serving it up for people rather than as a prize. And then the people who went on the scavenger hunt just got lost, and it snowed over, and they'd lost a bunch of the tracks. I like that. All right, what else? What else have we got? The one hiding things had dementia. Forgot where he put things. Who was in charge of hiding things? Let's roll to see who it was. Most likely a dwarf. So we'll. I need to lean it towards 3s and 4s, 3s and 400s. So we'll roll again with advantage on this one. So it's either 802 or 702. So either one. 702 makes it a forest gnome. So there was a forest gnome, a single forest gnome person who, and what were they? One. So a forest gnome man was in charge of the scavenger hunt. He doesn't have the best memory. What's this forest gnome man called? What's the forest gnome man called who buried things and hid things before it snowed and then couldn't remember where he put them? Fergus. I like that. Fergus Doug Urkel, and he's a forest gnome, so they're going to have lots of names, so I can take them all. Fergus Doug Urkel Donovan. Twinkie Mingus Bong Cracklehead. Mingus Bong Cracklehead. There you go. So Fergus Doug Urkel Donovan Twinkie Mingle Bong Cracklehead. Mingus Bong Cracklehead is a forest gnome, and he was in charge of the scavenger hunt this year. What does he normally do? What is his job? Fergus's job in town. He's a little bit absent-minded, perhaps. Maybe he's losing his marbles a little bit. A detective. He's a detective. There needs to be a bomb in the name, otherwise it's not canon. All those names and then add the third. Librarian, carpenter, librarian, tanner, carrot picker, scribe, gardener, sewage worker. These guys don't have sewage. Well, they have sewage, obviously. They don't have a sewer system. Barrel maker, village bum. I'll pick one of these. Librarian, scatterbrain librarian, priest, a farmer. Let's have a look. I kind of like librarian. That one stuck out to me for some reason. He's going to be a librarian usually. Fergus is a librarian. He was in charge this year of the scavenger hunt, and it did not go particularly too well. So on the 1st of Syntabrun, we've got what's his chops? Gordon. Gordon is making tamales. It's not going too well. In fact, it's going terribly. A bunch of kids are making some decorations, burning them, and by accident, and then just pulling crappy pranks on people. Then we've got a scavenger hunt that is also going not well. So we did some good preparation for this festival, but the actual first day of the festival is not going well yet. What else is happening on the first day of the festival? Cake throwing. Is that a thing that's happening? Okay, cake throwing. Is that like a food fight situation? I like that. That's something that the god of levity would definitely enjoy. 15. Oh, okay. People are getting into it this year with the cake throwing. Let's describe a 15 on cake throwing. Why is it going so well this year? It's further above average than this year than it was last year or the year before. It's only cheesecake. Is that why it's good this year? Because it's sloppy and splats. Last year they were throwing bloody fruitcake, and it was just ow, fuck! Don't throw fucking rock cakes. This year it's splattable cakes. They're throwing the yucky tamales at each other. There's just this one person nailing everyone with cakes, and everyone's having fun grouping up against them. I like that one, Tempest. I like that a lot. So who is the person who is absolutely dominating on cake throwing this year? They are, and do this one, take the lower of the two. So that is 171. 171 is human. So we've got a human. Let's roll for their gender. 19 is female, cis female. So we've got a human female, a human woman. She is absolutely nailing people with the cakes this year. What's her name? Astria. I love it. Astria Karen. Astria Sylvanestra. I love that. That's a nice last name. Sylvanestra. Astria Sylvanestra is normally what? But she's now she's a guard. I like it. Okay, she's a guard. So she is a Knight of Kvosna normally. Knight of Kvosna. Kvosna, for those who are new to my games, is the god of protection. He's got a faction named after him called the Knights of Kvosna that are town guards and adventurers for the most part. She's relatively strong in the upper body. She's got a good aim. She's launching cakes at people, and she's really enjoying letting her hair down. She's normally protecting the town, and because people know that she is well known around the town and well respected, well trusted, and so she's really enjoying just getting into letting that all go and nailing some people with cakes. And she does floristry in her downtime. Let's see, because I just saw somebody put that. Floristry as a hobby. So Astria's nailing with people with cakes, and everybody's having a real good blast, teaming up against her, trying to come in behind, use tactics to like flank her, and then she sees it coming because she's more prepared with her study of dangerous situations. Obviously, she's used to being in dangerous situations as a Knight of Kvosna. So she sees them like coming and flanking on either side, and as a cheesecake gets launched at the back of her head, she ducks down. It's absolutely pie in the face to another contender that was raising up to throw his as well, and right in the middle, goes head over heels. Everybody's having a good old time. He falls into a snowdrift, gets whitewashed as well. She nailed the mayor square in the face. The mayor stands up and shouts, the best cake of the festival goes to the person who can nail Astria. And she turns around and says, nail me, nail this. And she throws the thing, and it lobs all the way across. And he slaps across his face. There's cheesecake down his beard. Can we get her details for a drink later? Well, the good thing about it is, Stav is here again, is that we're having a good old time creating all these people, and they're all going to die. They're all going to get killed and eaten by Unguhef in a few months. Let's invest all of our enjoyment into these people and bring them to life so that it really hits home when I kill them with a dragon. Alright, so we've got scavenger hunt that's going particularly poorly, cake throwing, which is going well, we've got kids pulling pranks, which is kind of meh, and somebody making tamales, which is not going well at all. What else? What else is happening on the first day of the festival? I feel like we've got a couple more things we can do on this day, and then we'll jump forward a few days. Can we have one of those fire artist people? Awesome, yeah, I love that. So somebody doing like spinning fire poi, juggling with fires, blowing fire out and things. I like that one. An 11, so just above average this year. So the fire artisan is not doing anything spectacular or like noteworthy this year, but it is just above average. Let's roll to see who they are. Who is the fire artisan in town? That is roll again to see if it's a dwarf. 150. Oh, 450. 450, I believe, is a dwarf. Yes, it's a hill dwarf. Perfect. Hill dwarf, and roll for their gender. They are a cis female hill dwarf fire artisan. So what's their name? This woman hill dwarf fire artisan, and what do they do for a living normally? Portia. I like that. That's a good name. Portia. Porsche Pyra. It's a bit on the nose. Porsche Arip. Porsche Pari. Trying to make it some sort of anagram, but it's not very. Porsche Hlen. Porsche Smolders. I kind of like that. Porsche. I'm just going to put Porsche Molders because it's not less on the nose. Porsche Molders is a female hill dwarf. What does she normally do? What does she do for a living normally, Porsche, when she's not doing fire artistry? A blacksmith usually, so she's working with fire. I kind of like that. Yeah, she's a blacksmith. So Porsche, who is normally a blacksmith, in her downtime, she likes to practice fireworking. She likes to manipulate coals and things. Maybe she's got like a half level in sorcerer or something. Maybe she's got like an ability. She's got a single cantrip that she knows control flames, and so she does beautiful flame work. And it's this year she's been focused on other things. She's a housewife. I like that. So she's a housewife as well as a blacksmith. She's been busy with her kids maybe this year, so she didn't have a lot of time to practice or come up with a new routine, which is why it's kind of just average. But it's still enjoyable. It's still always fun. It's a couple of the people in town. It's their favourite thing to watch Porsche doing her fire juggling, because they don't get a chance to see her doing it very often. She's so busy with being a blacksmith and a housewife. She likes the sparkly bits and electric grinders rand a thing. I'm not sure what you meant by that, Stav. Started learning how to do it because she was chasing kids out one day, accidentally brought a sword she was making and lit something on fire, so she tried to spin it around to put it out. That's how she discovered she could control the flames, and she's been doing it ever since. She's got a new kid on the way. Yeah, she's up the duff. She's got a new kid on the way. So she was pregnant. That'll tie into that latest story delightfully. Pregnant with a new kid. Blacksmith / housewife. Lots of things she can do. Control flames. All right, one more thing on the festival and the first day of Sintabrun on the full moon. It's a nice bright night. What do we do during the day? Just pranks and cake fights? Is there anything else going on in the day? A local spellcaster of some kind makes a light show with dancing lights for everyone. Okay, so instead of this just happening, I'm going to roll first a percentage check to see what the chances are of there being a spellcaster in Schafgushel. It's not a very common occurrence, but then again, prestidigitation is a very low-level magic that can make sparks and things. But if they want to make like a big illusion show with, then they're going to need at least first-level spells. So let's roll a percentage check. 65. So maybe there was a spellcaster in town that could do that, but maybe they've gone off to visit their family over this time of year or something. So there isn't a spellcaster in town that can do first level spells, but let's roll with a slightly higher chance now. Let's see if there's anybody with the prestidigitation cantrip in town. Oh yeah, easy, 13. So with 13, there's two different people who have the prestidigitation cantrip in town. It's a relatively low level thing, and so there's an Arcanist's Entente here in town that has a very small post. It's maybe just like 2 or 3 people that are studying wizards, and so they've got maybe one of them's got a first level spell, but it's not light or dancing lights what's the first level illusion spell called? Whatever it is. They don't have illusion spells, so they can't really help with the lights or evocation spells, but they've got minor illusion and they've got prestidigitation between them. So they're putting on a little show for the kids. Let's see how it's going. 16, that's pretty good. So a quote-unquote fireworks, in inverted commas, and that's going to 16. So why is it so much better this year than the year before? And who are they? That is either a human with a 15 or... Oops, sorry. Just reroll that one. 615. What would 615 be? A wood elf. Wood elf? Nah, I think human. So they were a human. What gender were they? 20, so that's a female. A woman, a female, and who was the other one with the prestidigitation? 759, or to the lower of the two, 159. So another human. So a human woman and a human man. Human woman and a human man have got their prestidigitation and illusion cantrips. One of them named Mariella. Mariella, human woman. Arcanist's Entente. Low level wizard. And then Purvis was the other guy. Just the first name that I saw there. Purvis was AE. Arcanist's Entente. Purvis. Human man. Low level wizard. Why is it so much better this year than before? Maybe they just came back with from a trip and got inspired by what they saw. I like that. Yeah, they've so Matthew and sorry, what was it? Purvis and Mariella. Purvis and Mariella have just returned from a trip. They would have probably been to what's a nearby town. There's a dwarven city to the south. I can't remember what that's called off the top of my head. Let's say they came from Fondurg, just for argument's sake, because I know Fondurg's relatively nearby. So they've come back from a trip to Fondurg. While they were in Fondurg, Fondurg has got a decent chunk of their population are gnomes. Gnomes are tinkerers and intelligent folk. There's a few with natural proclivities for wizardry. So they've learned a little bit from the gnomes there. Maybe they visited a woman called Vala, who is a wizard in that town, member of the Arcanists Entente. They went on a bit of an excursion to learn from the Arcanists in a larger town. Well, not really a larger town, but a more developed Arcanists town. And they learned a few little tips and tricks. They brought back with them, and they've been inspired, and they're putting on a show. The show this year was a little bit more exciting, perhaps. All right, so I think that's enough for the first day of Sintabrun, the main sort of celebration. Sintalun maybe feels like it was average overall, with some poor pranks and scavenger hunt, but some good cake throwing and fireworks kind of evens it out a little. I'm becoming attached, and I've already been told they'll all die. Flee, everyone! Get out of town! It's too late. They're already dead. This is a flashback. There's nothing you can do. Not all of them, maybe. Some of them might have fled town, perhaps. It might be the case that Apis might bump into some of these people at some point if they manage to survive the Schafgushel attack. So, the last little bit of the week. So that was the first of the week. We've got my weeks in my worlds are 8 days long. So on the 8th is All Joys Day. We've got obviously the 6 days in the interim to prepare for All Joys Day. What do you reckon we're doing? Any last little things that we haven't said yet? We've done cutting down trees, decorating things, killing livestock, hunting so that we've got food. Obviously we're going to be preparing that food. Gathering snow to make an ice sculpture competition, ice fishing, making ice skates, making decorations, making tamales, pulling pranks, scavenger hunts, cake throwing, fire artists, and fireworks. The weekend is just one day. Sinter Day is the only day of the week. Only day of the weekend, I should say. Sheep chasing. Snowshoe racing. Oh, snowshoe racing. I like that one. Any contests like ugly sweaters or baking? Yeah, that could be cool. A contest. All right, let's roll some of these. So let's say a snowshoe race, because I liked that idea. Oh, 15. A snowshoe race this year is going well. Snowshoe race 15. And then the let's say baking competition. Baking competition 6. Not a good year for the baking competition. So why is it that the snowshoe racing and the baking competition were better and worse this year, respectively? They used some of the ingredients for the baking competition as pranks this year. They throwing flour into people's faces and stuff, and so it's eaten into the baking competition. And then the baking competition was being presented just as somebody run past and was like, "Oh, great, thanks!" Grabbed them and threw them as cakes, like as part of the cake flinging competition earlier. No, that was part of my what's it called? My entry. That was my entry to the baking competition. You all left the cookies burning during the race. That's probably what happened. Yeah, one of the persons baking cookies this year was involved in the snowshoe race, and then the race went a little longer than they expected. Burned the cookies by the time they got back. Nearly a 3-way tie on the race. Came down to the last lap. I like that. Yeah, the 3-way tie on the race. Let's name the person who won the race, shall we? Who won the snowshoe competition race this year? Ooh, this could be a rare race here. 973 or 273, and you have to go with the lower. 273 is a Lightfoot halfling. Makes sense. They are light. They do not sink into the snow. So who's this Lightfoot halfling? What gender are they? 18. This is female. So if a woman halfling won the snowshoe race this year. What was her name, and what does she normally do for a living? Evelina. I like that. Daniela Evelina. I'm going to go with that one. Daniela Evelina. What does she normally do? Female Lightfoot halfling. Is she a hunter? A hunter and a painter. Florist. We don't like having florists, don't we? She was a baker. She was a baker. I kind of like that. She was a baker, but she didn't win the baking competition because she was too busy winning the snowshoe competition. Snowshoe race. Baker / what else does she do? She's a baker and I learned a word the other day, Baxter, apparently. Female baker was called a Baxter. I didn't realise that there were even 2 different names for it, like there is actor and actress. But apparently back in the day a baker was a man and a Baxter was a woman. She was a baker and a bookbinder. Why not? I like that. Bookbinder. She was a baker and a bookbinder, Daniela Evelina, and she won the snowshoe race this year. Quick, save Astria, someone, before the flashback ends. She's gonna die. So, this is happening during the week. What else is happening during the week, however, is there is a troupe of theatre performers in town that are preparing for a play to be put on during the evening of All Joy's Eve. This troupe of performers is rehearsing all week to put on the best play they can. So I'm going to be rolling a rehearsal check, as it were. 15. So their rehearsal is going well enough that that's going to give them advantage on a performance check. So it comes down to the last day before All Days Eve. The last day before All Joy's Day. A day known as All Joy's Eve. It is the last of the work days for the year, and people are enjoying it. People usually, as soon as the work day is over on All Joy's Eve, people let loose. There is brewing going on. Oh, we didn't brew. We didn't see how the brewers are going. We're in a dwarven town, a hill dwarf town. There's going to be some brewing going on. I'm even going to roll with advantage on this one. So that's a 13 or a 6. So a 13 for brewing. The alcohol this year is slightly above average with a 13. So people usually let loose, get drunk, and as we approach the nightfall, people gather in near to the town square. Who's the god of theatre again? Let me look him up real quick. Jukipsos is a greater god of the trickery domain, whose portfolio includes performance, performing arts, imagination, music, dreams, and thoughts, and his place of worship is the theatre. His divine symbol is a circle inside a circle with 4 spiral arms connecting the two. 4 spiral arms, rather. Let me draw a very, very quick and very crude drawing of him. Something a little like that is his symbol. Jukipsos, god of the theatre. So he has a place of worship, a temple that also doubles as a theatre, and people start to go there. There is a performance put on every year on the last day of the last day before All Joys Day, the next day, and people are looking forward to it. The rehearsals have been going well with a 15 rehearsal check. And as we take to the stage, we are now the theatre group, we take to the stage and we are going to roll a performance check. Unlike all of the other ones that have just been a straight D20, this has got a proficiency performance bonus to it. So we have a plus to this roll, and because rehearsals went well, we have advantage on the roll. 12 or 16. 16 plus 5 for our bonus takes it to 21. A 21 performance. However, unlike a normal performance check, which would determine how well the entire show goes, that 21 is simply 21 narrative points that we have. And here's how I'm going to work the rest of this session. We are going to dive into the story that these performers are telling, and we're going to decide what it is that they do, what story is it that they're telling. I've done this similarly before in one of the Halloween specials. You and I are going to work together to make a story. So the people in chat, you're going to put a word into the chat when I get a chance. I'm going to open up my Nightbot so I actually remember. I'm going to put a word into the chat, and if you want to be responsible for continuing this story, you can add that word to the chat, and then I will draw somebody at random, and that person will tell me the next part of the story. At any point, you can use one of our 21 narrative points, our narrative power. You can use one, 2, or 3 narrative points to tell me something that has happened to the story. You can change the direction of the story from somebody that you're leading on from, and you can say, and then boom, a big twist happened. You can invent a new character for the story. You can tell me, oh, and our guy had a potion of healing on his person, and you've just invented an aspect of the story that didn't exist before. So you can use those narrative points to continue the story, and I can give you more narrative points to introduce conflict to the story. So don't worry, we'll work it out as we go. So let me enter a keyword in the chat. The keyword is going to be !prologue. And for those who aren't good at spelling, that is spelled like that. If you want to be in with a chance to start out this story that this theatre troupe are telling, type !prologue into the chat, and you will, when drawn, you will be given the chance to write a couple of sentences that starts out this story. Basically, the prologue will just be the setting of the story. Where are we setting it? Is it going to be a comedy? Is it going to be a drama? Is it going to be a true historical event? Is it going to be an adventure, an action, a romance? Yeah, you can decide. Basically, whoever's starting out is gonna set the scene for what this story is going to be, and you can use those narrative points to say, hey, I want to use 3 narrative points to start the story strong and say, there's a dragon attacking a town, and we like have a hot opening, or what? Do they call it a cold opening when it's when you're just thrust into the action without any warm up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Roll it. Loopy Haze. Loopy Haze, are you still in the chat? And yes, Sparrow, you can just tell us something that you want to do, and if I feel like that's going to cost some narrative points in order to do it, I will deduct those narrative points. So Loopy Haze, start to think about how this story is going to start. Is it going to be a comedy, a tragedy, an action, an adventure? Is it a romance? What is the topic of this story that this theatre troupe is telling? Should be an adventure story set on a cold and stormy winter's night with our group stuck in a cabin on a hill. Awesome, I love it. So that is a perfect start to the story. It's going to be an adventure story set in a cold and stormy winter's night with our group stuck in a cabin on a hill. And you've established the weather of the thing, the setting. We're in a cabin on a hill. We're stuck, and you've established that it's a group story. It's sort of an ensemble story. And it's about an adventure. I love that, Loopy Haze. Very well done. That is only going to cost you 1 narrative point for that. So we are down to 20 narrative points left. I'll set up the next keyword. So Mythical Tyrion has won the giveaway for the second for chapter 1 after the prologue. We have got the setting. The setting is a cold, dark hill. We're in a cabin, stuck. It's an adventure story. It's a stormy winter's night. You can start to introduce characters if you want. Oh, you've got it ready. Awesome. They are running low on wood for the fireplace and might need to select someone to go get some wood outside despite the terrible weather. I love it. I love it. So that is going to be just 1 point of narrative power. If you want to introduce a character in particular, mythical, you can do that now. That is very much a chapter 1 thing to do. Who is the person that's going to have to venture outside in this terrible weather to go and get some firewood? Is it possible to gain narrative points? It is. If I introduce a conflict, I am using my conflict points. And then if I use my conflict points, they become narrative points for you. So let's start pasting it into here. Let's start pasting the story as we know it into here. Who was the first one? Loopy Haze. A wizard tabaxi. Okay, cool. So they need to select someone, brackets, a wizard tabaxi. That won't cost you any further narrative points. It's just setting the scenes, as it were, setting up the potential for conflict there. So they're running low on wood, stuck in this cabin. So everybody, all together now, why are we stuck? Why did they get stuck? Is it because of the weather that they're stuck? Is it because of the location? Has there been a landslide or an earthquake or a volcanic eruption nearby, or what? Is there some kind of monster that's circling nearby that's preventing them from leaving this cabin? We have a group of people stuck in this cabin. Why are they stuck? Because of heavy snowfall, an avalanche, a blizzard. I like it. All right, so snowfall, blizzard, avalanche. So these people are stuck. It's a stormy winter night. They're stuck in a cabin on a hill because of a blizzard. They're running low on wood for the fireplace. They might need to select someone, a wizard tabaxi, to go and get some wood outside despite the terrible weather. We got a name for that tabaxi. I think somebody named them. Where was it? Crescent. Crescent. Like croissant. Wizard. Crescent. A wizard tabaxi. The snow is too dense to continue travelling, ending up stuck. Yes, so they're stuck in this cabin in the woods. Now, we still haven't established, is this a fictional tale? Is it a historical narrative that these this theatre troupe know about? Is it a real story that they've heard throughout their travels? Have they embellished several stories and put them into one? Regardless, our heroes of this story, our protagonists anyway, they're stuck in a cabin in the woods, and one of them turns to the wizard. Listen, Crescent. You're the strongest among us. You're the nimblest on your feet. You haven't been sinking into the snow like the rest of us. It's gonna have to be you. Crescent looks over the rest. I'm not exactly the hardiest among us. Looking around their dwarven companions. Not exactly the strongest or hardiest. But I understand. You've got the best understanding of how magics work. If you get into trouble, you're the most adept at getting yourself back here. Very well. Now, I'm going to introduce the conflict that Crescent does not want to go. Crescent wants to trick one of the others into coming along, or preferentially going in their stead. So the conflict I'm introducing, taking you back up to 20 points, is that Crescent is reluctant. Crescent does not want to go. Let's roll chapter 2, see what happens. Rovaljax, you are continuing the story from here. Rovaljax says, Crescent may have called for a signal accidentally that would have made one of the remaining companions in the cabin go out, like leading the wizard +1 to doom. Let me see if I understand this correctly. Crescent may have called for a signal accidentally that would have made one of the remaining companions in the cabin go out. Called for a signal. Oh, so Crescent went outside and then made a call to make one of the other ones go outside. Go out looking for the wizard. Gotcha. Smart. I like it. Good continuation of the story there. Copy this into here, into my document, my continuing document. Alright, so I will say, as Crescent reluctantly accepts their duty to go out, they bundle up as best they can, the furry hood on, the furry cloak around the waist, the robes tied around the waist, and they push out into the snow, pushing the door open against the snowfall, and then it slams shut behind them. Looking around in the darkness of the blizzard, barely able to see anything. They start moving towards where the tree line was. And all the way they're thinking, I could die out here alone and they would never know it. I shouldn't be out here on my own. One of them should come and find me. And so Crescent turns and just at the tree line calls out. Ah! Ah! Screams in pain. They're not actually in pain, but they're making it seem like they are. So one of their companions pushes out. Rovaljax, tell me, who is the companion that comes looking for them? Comes pushing out of the door, coming to Crescent's rescue, and potentially their own demise. Who is the person that's coming to their rescue, and what are they? Are they a dwarf, a human, an elf, tiefling? An Aasimar paladin named Aureus, who is the heart of this merry band of cabin folk. I love it. Awesome. So they are kind of the hero of the story. It's an ensemble piece for the most part, but Aureus is kind of the leader of the group. I will charge you. I think just one narrative point for setting up that new character. Alright, Menezes, you're up. As an Asima paladin comes out of the cabin, the Crescent hears them call back into the cabin. You stay here! I'll go see what's wrong! The door slams shut in the wind. They push through the snow after you. They're not, I'm going to say, introduce a new conflict because they've been called to your aid, and they are the type of person who will come charging out. They are not perfectly dressed for the weather. They managed to grab one cloak and put it over themselves before they left the building. But the conflict I'm introducing for the cost of one extra narrative point for you is that Aureus is not well dressed for the weather. So as they trudge through the snow, pulling their cloak down as close as they can around, hand going down to their weapon, drawing it out to help Crescent. They get to the tree line and they see Crescent standing there, and they say, "What's wrong, Crescent? I thought I saw something in the trees ahead. I should not go alone. It's dangerous." "Right, but you are okay?" "I'm okay." "Very well. We shall move on together." And Crescent has successfully tricked another of the party to come with them on this dangerous journey into the cold. So Menezes, where does the story go from there? The two of them trudging away to find some firewood. The people in the audience in this theatre seem to be enjoying the story so far. The setup of an antagonist in the form of Crescent, and a protagonist in the form of Aureus. Aureus rushes out the cabin as the storm is heavy around him. It is really cold and the cloak is opening in the wind as he walks in the heavy snow, already shivering. He goes with Crescent and they start walking together. As they're walking, they are trying to find firewood, so they go deep into the forest. They soon find a tree that could easily be chopped, but in between the woods, they also see a weird dull light not so far away, deeper into the woods. Ooh, I like that a lot. I'm going to copy that into my document here so that we've got a record of it. Menezes, well done. So what have we introduced there? We've introduced Crescent they're walking together, trying to find firewood. You've introduced that they've found a tree that would be good for firewood, so that's going to cost you one narrative point. But then you've also introduced there's a weird dull light not so far away. So that's going to cost you 2 narrative points. You're down to 18 narrative points left, narrative power. And I love that you've introduced a crossroads. Do we continue on? Do we stay here and chop this wood? Do we go and investigate this weird dull light? It could be a cabin that's more well stocked. It could be a safe house. It could be a campfire around which sit some fire genies or something that could keep you all warm and grant you a wish to get home or something. But it could also be some kind of will-o-wisp luring you away to your doom and demise. There's risk and reward. What's going to happen? If you want to be in with a chance to continue the story, you can !chapter 4 in the chat there, no spaces. And we will draw this now. Sparrow, fly away. Start thinking about how you're going to continue the story as you are telling chapter 4. You have 18 narrative points to use as of right now. And I believe there's enough conflict going on right now that I don't need to introduce any more just yet. There is Crescent, who is who has been established to be a rather selfish tabaxi wizard. Did not want to be out here on their own. Maybe they were just doing it because they were frightened, or maybe because they were uncaring of others. I don't know. It's up to you guys. Yeah, maybe the scene now could leave those at that crossroads and then shoot back to the cabin, and we could cut back to see what's happening in the cabin with the other ensemble. That's a good point, Drukiru. Let's see. It's up to Sparrow whether you want to continue the story with the 2 characters we've seen. Sparrow, you could use a narrative point to jump back to the cabin and introduce more characters. Have we decided amongst us whether this is going to be fiction or non-fiction, fiction or a fictional account of a historical event. I think while we're waiting on Sparrow to write hers, I think I'll actually put that to a poll. Is this story that this theatre troupe is telling based on true events? Is it entirely based? It's entirely a true story? It's mostly a true story, but there's fictional elements a little. It's maybe a couple of bits are based from true stories taken from various different things, but the story itself is fictional, or is the entire thing just made up? Alright, Sparrow continues the story. The pair of them creep towards the light, curiosity getting the better of them, and they find a small clearing with a strange glowing crystal in the centre, guarded by a sleeping griffin. I love it. Alright, so you have chosen death. You have chosen to continue the story of the two of them, so that doesn't cost you a narrative point because we were already on them. You're not changing scenes. You've chosen to go towards the conflict rather than the safe version of chopping down the tree, so that doesn't cost you a narrative point because that's essentially a conflict that you're adding for yourself. And then you've introduced a glowing crystal and a sleeping griffin, so that's cost you just the one narrative point to introduce a sleeping griffin. I love it. So while we decide on what to do next, I am going to introduce a conflict which gives you a narrative point back. You are back up to 18 narrative points as I'm introducing a flashback scene. Crescent, the tabaxi, was raised essentially by people that were not like himself. He is not raised by tabaxis because the tabaxi clan that he was from were mostly devoured by a flock of griffins, and he had developed a lifelong hatred of them. That is the conflict, the conflict point that I am using to give you a narrative point. So you have 18 narrative points. You can use them to introduce new characters, to take the story in a different direction, to change the scene entirely, to introduce an element on your belt or in your inventory that we haven't yet established. You can use your narrative points for a whole bunch of things. Any one person can only really introduce up to 3 things in their particular chapter, because we don't want one person just running away with it and going, oh, and then this happens and this happens and telling the entire story themselves. This is a collaborative story. You can introduce up to 3 new elements, or change the scene and introduce 2, or anything you like. You can introduce a flashback scene like I did, where the reader or the listener of this play, the watcher, the audience of this play, sees all of the characters change character, all of the players change character, and they continue with a completely new scene, denoting some sort of flashback of their life before. As they're on the stage, you see griffins being lowered down from the rafters, the gods, as it were, flying down, griffins, and you see like a flashback of the tabaxi player, the character of the tabaxi, seeing the griffins flying, hearing the cries of their parents dying to griffins. And Phase 16, you are continuing the story. So, do they try and attack? Does Crescent attack the griffin out of hatred and vitriol? Okay, so the poll has ended with 43% of you voting that it's maybe a few elements of it are truth, but it's mostly fictional. And 38% of you voting for yes, it's true, but it's fictionalized. So we're going to go somewhere in between that, roughly half and half. About half of the story is based on true accounts, but maybe names and characters have been embellished. Maybe a couple of characters have been invented entirely. Maybe the things that they're facing are not exactly what they faced. It's been stitched together by a couple of different stories with mortar, fictional mortar holding the factual bricks together, as it were. Alright, Faye has continued the story back at the cabin. So we're changing scene. Back at the cabin, a human male samurai fighter called Daniel hears what sounds like a woman screaming and goes out to investigate. He's driven by a strong sense of duty to help others, even at the expense of his own life. Wonderful. All right. So back at the cabin. So you've changed the scene. That's going to cost you 1 narrative point. A human male samurai fighter called Daniel. You've introduced a new character that's a narrative point. And here's a woman screaming and goes out to investigate. That's a driving point forwards. That's a change of direction. That's an entrance of some kind of driving force. It's driven by a strong sense. So that won't cost you anything. The scream, because that's essentially like a conflict driving the story forwards, and you'll get those for free. And then he's driven by a strong sense of duty to help others. You're telling me something about that character at the expense of his own life. That's going to cost another narrative point. So we are down to 15 narrative points, as we have got 2 scenes ongoing now. We've got a tabaxi wizard who hates griffins and is a little selfish, and then we've got them paired with a paladin, an Asimar paladin, who is all about helping others. If you want to be in with a chance to continue the story from where Faye's left off there, we can put chapter 6 in the chat, / chapter 6. And then we've got this other scene. As this plays out on the stage, the characters, the actors playing the tabaxi and the paladin, see this sleeping griffin, a man in a costume, curled up on the stage. And then, "What's wrong, Crescent?" the paladin asks. And then some stagehands rush on dressed in black and start to cover up everything. They rush between Crescent and the paladin and the person dressed as the griffin, with a large black cloth trailing behind them, covering all but Crescent with this darkness behind them. And as they do, these puppets on strings being manipulated by people in the rafters of the theatre come swooping down, and people in the wings are screaming like tabaxis being killed by griffins. As we see a flashback of him, his hatred for griffins, and we see the actor emoting about how much he hates griffins in a soliloquy to the audience. The cloth behind continues past, revealing the scene behind him with the sleeping griffin and the paladin. Only now we have more context for it. As the tabaxi moves towards them, all of them move off of off of the stage, and the scene changes. A curtain raises, and behind we're back to the cabin scene, and pushing open the door into the wind, blowing fake snow onto the stage with a big fan, or somebody casting the gust spell. A new character steps out onto the stage. A human male samurai fighter called Daniel. He hears a woman scream and sets out to investigate. Spider 0095, you are continuing the story from here. People seem to be enjoying the story so far. The audience is gasping in all the right places and laughing in all of the comedic moments. Ooh, Spider's right onto it, look. Bam. Back in the cabin, Arax the wood elf. Arax's fever gets worse. The cabin grows ever colder and colder with the fire running lower and lower. Arax shivers and moans in great pain. Oh, love it, I love it, I love it. So you have swapped the scene back inside the cabin again, introduced Arax, a wood elf, and the fact that they have a fever that is getting worse. I love those. I love it. I love it. That's going to cost you, I'll say 2 points, because the fever is an added conflict that you've added to the story. So it's going to cost you 2 narrative points. One to change the scene back into the cabin, and one to introduce another character. Let me roll the next person first, so I don't forget who's going to be in with a chance. The Fancy Unicorn. You will be continuing chapter 7. Start thinking about how this is going to go. The human samurai fighter pushes out of the cabin, and in search of the woman's scream, sets off. And as he sets off, he actually kind of walks on the spot as the entire setting of the cabin on the stage starts to turn on the spot with a turntable. And he's walking around, he's sort of walking on the turntable, disappears, so he's walking towards the right hand wings, and instead ends up going stage left, as it reveals the interior of the cabin. And Arax is now huddling and shivering in front of the very low dying fire. The fire being flickering orange and yellow silks that are being pulled by a stagehand hidden in the walls of this cabin, and they're releasing them a little bit so that they drop lower and lower. The fire is clearly getting lower as Arax is shivering in front of the fire. Hopefully they didn't leave Arax alone in the cabin. They might have. We haven't introduced any more. We didn't establish how many people are in this cabin. Fancy Unicorn says, the paladin looks at the griffin and remembers the griffins of his childhood. He always admires these sleek animals, famed and honoured by his town. Looking back at the tabaxi, he starts to move forwards. Ooh, I love it. So now we've introduced a conflict between these two main characters, the paladin and the tabaxi. The paladin looks at the griffin, so we've used a narrative point to switch back to these guys. That's from Fancy Unicorn. There we go. Paladin looks at the griffin, remembers the griffins of his childhood, admires them. We've introduced how he feels about this animal and how it's in direct conflict with the other one. Because it's in direct conflict with the other one, I will let that one go for free because it's essentially a conflict point that you've used yourself. Now the tabaxi hates these griffins, and the paladin loves them and honours them. And they're both standing nearby a sleeping one, next to a glistening gem, a shimmering, glowing gem as well. So, wonderful use there. Who is going to be next? Kukria. Kukria, you are going to be next to continue the story. We're currently in the scene with... so as the cabin is shifted round, and we've shown Arax huddling and they have to get back soon, and their fever is they're sweating. They've had a wet cloth in their hand that right before they turn around, they squeeze it onto their forehead so that they've got rivulets of sweat coming down their face. And the cabin just simply keeps turning, just enough to show Arax. And then the curtain comes back down, and in comes from the wings the griffin, the man in the griffin costume, the paladin, and the tabaxi. So Kukria continues the story. Crescent's hair has started to curl on end, and he growls as the paladin gets closer, eventually grabbing his shoulder. "Don't get near that thing!" Crescent starts describing a plan under his breath to get the jump on it. He's also eyeing the gemstone. Interesting. So Crescent is going to start a conflict. Crescent's hair starts to curl up on end. He growls at the paladin as he gets closer, eventually grabs his shoulder. "Don't get near the thing!" So there's a direct conflict now between these two characters. He starts describing a plan under his breath to get the jump on it. So he wants to kill it, to get the jump on it, to attack it, and to take the gemstone. You've introduced no new characters or a new scene, and you've introduced sort of a conflict between these two characters, so that's not cost you any narrative points. It's just a continuation of what we had before already. So who was next after Image was next. So Image, that's where you're continuing the story from. We've got a conflict happening between these two characters, the paladin and the tabaxi. One of them wants to honour and respect this sleeping griffin for their majesty and fame and what have you, and the other one wants to kill it and take its treasure, take its gemstone. You could, of course, also switch scenes and go off to explore what's happening with the samurai fighter Daniel. You could go back to the cabin and explore what's happening with Arax and his fever. So we should start trying to pull these stories back together, narrative threads. Try and pull them back together. We've gotten Act 1 finished. We're halfway through Act 2 of like a 3-act structure. We want to get to like a conflict with all 3 of the stories coming back together, and then a resolution with the last act of the play. The Wood Elf is filled with regret. Let me roll chapter 10. Kelso, so you can start thinking about where you're going to be going after this. Image says, the Wood Elf is filled with regret. As the navigator of the party, he allowed himself to be pressured by Crescent to guide the party to this forsaken forest. As he coughs, he attempts to explain to the remaining dwarves what he did. I love it. So back as the paladin goes out towards the griffin, the tabaxi grabs him and turns him around, and they have a scene where they're sort of having this arguing match about we should kill it. No, we need to plan. We can't kill the thing. It's a beautiful animal. Blah blah blah. But on top of that, the conflict from before is still in effect. The paladin is potentially not winning that fight. He's not in as good a place because he is also shivering in the cold. He is not dressed quite as securely as the tabaxi. So if it comes down to blows, this tabaxi knows he has the upper hand against this paladin. The paladin is in chainmail, which is sucking the heat from their body and transferring it into the night air. So that conflict point from before is still in effect. That the paladin is not in a good way. So as their scene reaches a tense head, the curtain behind them raises, and we see the reverse of the cabin once again. The tabaxi and paladin actors split on the stage, and we see Arax once more with the wet cloth on the forehead, rivulets of sweat coming down over their excessive stage makeup to make them look all flushed and fevered. Kelso was asked to pass, has he? Okay, we will re-roll. Who was the other one? Let's just roll chapter 11. Stetafire Unicorn. Hey, there's lots of unicorns in the chat. Got a Skeptic Unicorn, Fancy Unicorn, and a Stetafire Unicorn. We've got a veritable unicornucopia. Stetafire Unicorn, start thinking about where the story is going to go from here. And if you want to continue the story, type ~ chapter 12 in the chat. So as Arax, the actor, is getting his scene that he really looks forward to every time they play this play. It's his favourite scene because he really gets to emote and overact as he is about to. The wood has not returned for the fire. His fever's not going to break, and in the cold, his body just can't handle it. And so he doesn't want to die with this on his conscience. He coughs, attempts to explain to the remaining dwarves in the cabin. You've established a scene change. You've established that there's some more dwarves in the scene, so that's going to cost you 2 narrative points. So you're down to 10 narrative points remaining. And then I am going to give you a narrative point by introducing a conflict change that in the final moments of this particular scene in the cabin, Arax has his wonderful scene of his last words. And because nobody has returned with any wood for the fire yet, his fever gets the better of him. And he gives a proper dramatic death in the arms of one of these dwarves, as he explains to the remaining dwarves that he was pressured by Crescent. The dwarves are now aware that Crescent is being selfish, and that he is potentially out there on his own with the leader of their group, and anything could happen. The dwarves of the cabin stand to their feet and start to put on their cloaks, knowing that Crescent is a danger to the entire expedition. Where do we continue from here? Stetafire Unicorn continues the Daniel story. Daniel encounters a fairy woman who says, "Please, you must help me. I sense my griffin friend is in trouble. Follow me." Wonderful. All right. No, he was going to have the most brilliant speech. He did. Yeah, that was his speech. That was the character's epic scene. The actor playing him is enjoying that scene tremendously, because they get to be covered in sweat and shaking and shivering in the arms of the dwarves and really acting it up and hamming it out, and nobody gets to interrupt their speech, and they finally get a death scene. So we have got 3 separate scenes that are starting to come together. Back at Arax's cabin, the dwarves who have just discovered that Crescent is not to be trusted are wanting to go out and follow Crescent because they now realise that the paladin is with them alone. And Daniel, meanwhile, has just arrived in a clearing. Following this woman's scream, they see a beautiful woman looking almost naked from head to toe, but she's her skin seems almost bark-like and almost clothed in leaves. Her hair sort of falling in tasteful waves over her body. The actress on the stage performing this dryad is she is wearing a sort of a full body suit, a skin suit that looks like she's nude, except for tastefully placed bits of bark and leaves, and her hair is done well. So it's got a bit of sex appeal to this theatre play in this scene. Daniel's a human samurai wanting to serve others to his own detriment if necessary. And he has a wonderful scene with this dryad as he meets her and pledges his sword to her side if she needs his help. She orates the dangers of this forest and the dangers of being stuck out here alone, and she talks of the animal kind and the beasts of the forest that need aid, and in particular one beast known as a griffin who is protecting a sacred crystal nearby, and she fears this griffin may be in trouble from his kind, and she needs his help. Who is telling up the next section? Marie, you are telling the next section of this story. And after Marie, Kukria, you're going to be telling the story after Marie. I think Marie's chapter and then Kukria's chapter will be sort of like a final, and then like we'll have like the final chapter. All right. So Marie says, our samurai needs a ghost that intervenes, perhaps a loved one who tells them that peril lies ahead and advises them to not go any further. Oh, so the samurai doesn't go to help. Very interesting. Character development, and sets up a second story. Maybe this is something that this theatre troupe does every year. They introduce a new character into the story that continues off in a different direction, and then it leaves people in the town going, "What happened to that character, though?" And then the next year, it's a story of that character. So maybe the paladin of this story was the Daniel of the last story, or he was a side quest character that went off to investigate something, and then this is his story as he's at the end of that story we saw him stuck in a cabin, and then we started continuation of that story. Maybe every year is a new one. That's cool. Cool work, Marie. There we go then. So you have chosen to let's see. So we were already in the Daniel scene with the samurai and the dryad. So you haven't used a narrative point to change scenes there, but you have used a narrative point to introduce a ghost of a loved one, and you've taken them away from the story. So that's going to cost you 2 narrative points. We're going to go down to 9. We've got 9 narrative points left to wrap up this scene with. And then Kukria was next, I believe, weren't they? So Kukria, you're continuing the story from there. We're not going to have a samurai in this final fight. The dryad is trying to get them to come along, and the samurai is not having any of it because there's peril lying ahead. So the samurai is going to go off. Hey, no, 2 points is not a lot of points. Don't worry, you started off with 21 and you're down to 9, so we've done well on keeping points around. Better write that down for next year's Christmas special. Yeah, true. All right, so Kukria, I believe you were next, weren't you? And then while you're thinking of what to write, ! Final in the chat if you want to be in with a chance to write the final chapter of this play. We're into Act 3 now. What was I doing? What was I about to do? Yeah, so in that scene, the scene continues with the dryad and the samurai getting their time to shine as the two respective actors. It comes to a point where somebody lowered in on a harness, dressed up as a ghost, appears in the scene. Hark! A ghost! They overacted a little, and in comes one of the samurai's loved ones and says, "Daniel, danger lies ahead for you and the group. It is perilous to continue on this journey. The people of the fake forest are known to be tricksy. We advise you do not proceed." And he has this huge sort of monologue, which the actor does very well to do, despite being in a very painful harness hanging from the rafters. And then at the end of that scene, they're winched up in kind of like a juttery fashion, because some stage hands at the wings cranking, trying to get this actor back up into the flies. All right, so Kukria was continuing, wasn't it? Oh, there you are, perfect. The griffin awakens and the gem glows brighter as it does. The tabaxi is being held back by the paladin, but both begin to act differently with the gem's influence. Ooh, I like it. So the final conflict of this entire play might be that when the dwarves arrive, if the dwarves arrive, the paladin and the tabaxi are both changed forever. All right, let's roll it. Spider 0095, you get to tell the final chapter of this story. Is it the final fight? Is it a fight? Does something else happen? Do they arrive to find that nobody's there and everything is the griffin and the gem has been sucked into another portal? What happens? What happens in this one? The griffin awakens and the gem blows brighter as it does. So you've changed the scene with a narrative point back to the griffin scene. You've said that the griffin is awakening and the gem is glowing, and it has some sort of influence on them while it glows. So that is, I think, 3 narrative points. We're down to 6 narrative points. You guys have introduced enough conflict into the story that I don't have to. You have 6 narrative points to tell both the final chapter of this particular story and then the epilogue of this story. Things just got interesting. Same actor from earlier who died. Different character, but that's how they make it work with one actor, few characters. Yes, that's right. The actor from before, he had a wonderful death scene as he died of his fever, playing an elf, and then he got off stage and he took off his fake ears and he quickly mopped off all of the fever makeup. Didn't have very long to put his angel costume on, his ghost of a loved one costume, and then climb the ladder at the side, go across the rafters slowly and quietly so as to not disturb the epic scene of the dryad coming on the scene right below him. And then he has to get into his harness quickly, fasten himself up, test the rope, and then just like clamber off the edge. And he gives the little go ahead once he gets his cue, and he just like falls off the edge, and the guy has to catch him on the rope. And nice. People are enjoying the play. They're gasping in all the right moments. When the griffin was introduced and when the ghost came in. It's a ghost! If you called, he cries out. Alright, so what's the finale scene going to be? I have arisen! The ghost of Arax appears to all parties at once, with eyes as black as coal and shimmering devilously. You left me to die. The curse of the Tabili is upon you. He leans forward, lips drawn back in a snarl. Boom! And that's when it fades to black. It's a cliffhanger moment to end the play on. So, Ghost of Arax coming back into play. That's definitely the introduction of a new character, as it were. A sudden shift in the direction of the where the story was going. That's definitely a point. And then ending on a huge explosion. That's going to be a big narrative point. I'm going to cost you 2 for that. So you've got 2 narrative points remaining. As you're all the ghost of the guy had been pulled up out of the rafters at the end of that scene, and in the time it takes to just lift up the curtains and they've reset behind with the griffin again, and there's a short tussle between the paladin and the paladin and the tabaxi. They're fighting amongst each other. The dwarves now start to file in, and they're noticing that the paladin and the griffin are changing. The gemstone is glowing. The griffin awakens, and that actor finally gets his chance to give his best griffin roar. Who's going to roll the epilogue? Loopy Hayes. Loopy Hayes, you're going to write out the epilogue. Start writing what happens. It's usually like a flash forward in time a little bit and a look back on where those characters ended up. What happens in the epilogue of this story, the wrap up, the sort of the zoom out moment, the pan at the end of the movie that zooms out away from the action to show like what's happened, how this particular thing has affected the world at large. So the actor, meanwhile, has had that short tussle scene and the dwarves coming on stage and like fighting and the gemstone glowing. The gemstone glowing is because it's an actual magic item. It's a common magic item that the actor is attuned to, and he has to say the word. The griffin shouts, "Roar!" and then he whispers the word to the gemstone, and it glows brighter. It's a drift globe. And the actor playing Arax has got very little time. He's got to get back down from the rafters, get out of the harness and everything, and change his ghost costume just a little bit. He puts the ears back on. He's gonna put the ears back on quickly. Oh shit, my line's coming up. I can't get where's my other ear gone? Where's my other ear? Shit, I'm just gonna have to I'm gonna have to go on sideways because I don't have my other ear. Somebody's moved it. And then he runs downstage under the stage itself, gets onto the contraption to raise. And just as he's about to go up, he realizes, oh crap! I didn't put my eyes in. Where's Samantha? Samantha, quick! She comes over and he goes, thaumaturgy on my eyes, remember? And she goes, oh yeah, sorry. And she casts thaumaturgy on him, and his eyes start to glow coal dark, but like glowing. And then there comes the telltale sign that it's his cue. There's a cracking sound from above, and all of the audience screams as all of the lights go out. And then go. Crank. He comes up from the stage, and by the time the lights come on back on, like just 1 second later, he's standing there in his ghost costume with his ear. He's turned his head to the side so you can only see one of his ears. I have arisen. You have left me to die. And you will all pay the price. There's thunder cracks from above. His potion of spectral form wears off and he chugs them off. Starts to shimmer a little bit. And all the audience yells in surprise at this cliffhanger ending to the play as the curtains close. The audience is left in amazement at this wintry tale of betrayal and deceit. As the screen fades, all that's left on it is the gemstone. So the curtains close, the audience goes wild. Oh, what a cliffhanger! And then very quickly the curtains open again. It's the exact same scene, but everybody is missing except for that glowing drift globe just hanging there. Out of the blackness steps Arax, and he starts a monologue scene, explaining that the adventurers were never seen again. All that was left was a dingy old, burned-out cabin and rumours of a great adventure. And he gives his little Puck monologue. If, by chance, our something has offended, if our play has offended, think but this, and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here while these visions did appear. You removed some people from the scene. You haven't changed the scene. You've removed some people from the scene and then introduced the fact that they were never seen again. That costs you 2 narrative points, taking you down to 0. And you have used it perfectly. You've used all the exact right amount of narrative points to tell the story. The curtains close. Everybody is enjoying it tremendously. And then the curtains open for a curtain call as the actors come out and give their little bows. You can see the guy playing Arax is missing an ear. It was a very good story. Please drop a donation for the acting troupe in the bucket. Yeah, there's a little bucket comes out. Donations to the temple of Jakipsos, to the temple of the god of performing arts. And with the culmination of this play, everybody is having a very good time. It is a tremendous way to start the All Joys Day. It is past midnight by the time the play is over, and so technically it is All Joys Day. It is the start of the equivalent of Christmas or Yule or any other sort of midwintery festivals that we celebrate in the real world. This is my in-game equivalent of that. So as the town of Schafgushel starts out the day right with a fantastic play the night before, the actors are being overwhelmed the next day with questions as where the story continues and what they'll be doing with it next year and where it will be going and what happened with the griffin and why did they leave Arax to die and where did Daniel end up going and all of these sorts of questions. Everybody has a very good time. They enjoy the food that was hunted by Apis and brought back, the more exotic foods. They enjoy the snow gathering competition. They make snowmen and ice sculptures out of the snow that was gathered. They go off to do some ice fishing, but only a couple of people actually partake because the fishing rods weren't really there. A couple of people do the ice skating as well. And they generally just have a very good final Sintabrun and all joys day. And that is where I'm going to leave it for today. Thank you very much for joining me. Happy holidays, everybody. We had fun here today. But you know what else is fun? Liking and subscribing. Thanks.